Thank you so much for joining us today for our very first episode of our My Dyslexic Career series. Today I'm joined by Adrian, who is coming from London, I believe. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. It's awesome. Very, very early in the morning here.
Well, I do apologise. We did have to sort out the time difference, which is quite tricky to do, but we figured it out, and I'm really happy to have Adrian on today. And he's going to tell us a little bit about what his experiences have been throughout his early life as a dyslexic person and what his career journey has been as well. So hopefully some of you can relate to Adrian's experiences. And if you're interested in sort of entering a similar field to what Adrian's doing, hopefully you get something out of this as well.
Okay, so my name's Dr. Adrian Wallbank. I'm 41 years old. In terms of neurodiversities, I'm dyslexic. I'm not aware that I've got any other issues, but yeah, mainly dyslexia. I was diagnosed when I was 10. My current position, I'm currently a teaching fellow at Royal Holloway, University of London. I was previously the programme director for the integrated foundation year. I'm also a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy and an associate fellow of the Dyslexia Guild. So I mostly teach academic writing, academic skills and English literature with a particular twist towards dyslexia and dyslexic students.
And for people who are not sort of, who might be a bit younger and not sort of familiar with the university tertiary education kind of system, can you explain a bit more about like maybe what your day-to-day life looks like? Is it predominantly teaching? Are you involved in research, things like that?
Both, really. It's a combination of teaching, research and administration. So I have numerous classes in various formats ranging from lectures to one-to-ones. I do research, so I'm currently working on 2 projects. I'm working on a second edition of my dyslexia and academic writing book for Routledge. I'm also working on a book about foundation years and foundation year pedagogy, because a lot of dyslexic students enter higher education with dyslexia onto foundation years because they didn't perhaps make the grades at their previous, like in the UK, it's A levels. Yeah. So yeah, I'm working on a book about how best to cater for neurodiversity and diversity in foundation years and to help students succeed. So I think what gets me out of bed in the morning in my day-to-day job, including today, which of course is very, very early here in the UK, is helping and encouraging dyslexic students to succeed in higher education. That's what kind of gets me going and gets me out of bed in the morning.
Well, fantastic. I'm so glad we could connect then, because obviously that's what we're about as well. It's really fascinating to me because, for myself personally, I've just spent the past 48 hours trying to crank out a literature review that I had to write as part of my own university assignment. And it's, writing is something for me that I really struggle to get around, in the sense that, with reading, I can sort of turn on my text-to-speech software and I'm relatively good to go. But academic writing is definitely something that I'm still working on. So have you found writing, do you still find writing difficult as a dyslexic adult, or do you feel like that's changed for you over the years?
That's a tricky one, because I think since I started studying, I've tried so many different ways of writing. So I started off by writing with pen and paper. So I used to do all sorts of things, ranging from writing with certain coloured pens, sitting in certain places at my parents' dining table and thinking that I could write better there. One of the things I also did was write on a typewriter.
Okay.
As opposed
really
to a
old
computer.
School.
Very, very old school. And then word processing, which is what I do now. And I've reached the stage now, because I'm so busy with my teaching and administrative work and research, etc. Most of my writing is really, I just write notes into Word documents whenever I think of something.
Okay.
And it's completely random, and I worry about putting it together into a piece of writing later on, whereas previously I probably would have sat down and think, right, I need to write my introduction, then I need to write the first paragraph in sequence. Now I'm all over the place, and I worry about piecing it together towards the end. So I've tried various techniques, but yeah, writing's not been. It's been very, very difficult, but it took me a long time to kind of figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
But once I got there, I was okay.
Yeah. And for those people who, you know, regularly kind of watch our YouTube content and things like that, I have to say that I didn't clue in Adrian. I don't know if he's watched our videos before, but he said basically almost exactly what we've said in our essay writing videos. You know, if you can get to that point where you're writing non-sequentially and you can just write, you know, what comes to you at the time, sometimes that is a really helpful way of going about it. I used to say what you're passionate about at the time, and then I got to university and I was writing about a lot of things that I wasn't very passionate about. So I've changed my thinking a little bit here, and I now say, you know, the idea that you get at the time. But I think that's a really good way of going about it, because I think sometimes as dyslexics, you know, having that often that impacted short-term memory means that we just forget the idea before we have a chance to translate it into that written language sequence. So yeah, that's really fascinating. That's fantastic. Are there any tips that you've got specifically for dyslexics who are wanting to get better at that academic writing? I know this is, you know, your whole life, but do you have maybe one really, you know, overarching tip other than, you know, writing what you can in the moment?
So drawing diagrams, but more particularly mapping the structure of the essay or the structure of the paragraphs even, or the structure of even sentences into diagrams, which have a meaningful correlation with what it is you're supposed to be saying, or what the structure of an essay is supposed to be. I mean, at the most simple level, an introduction to an essay, you can visualize as a triangle. So you kind of go from a broad opening top to a narrow focus at the bottom. So you basically, in terms of, if you have a triangle next to your introduction, for example, you know that thematically you need to go from the bigger picture to a more narrow detail and an argument or some kind of thesis statement. And along the way, you gradually narrow in terms of the range and scope of topics, and obviously the relevance as well. Once I realized that you could make diagrams and follow templates, if you like, that seemed to make a lot of sense to me, and that really worked for me.
Yeah, fantastic. No, and I love that it's a visual representation for you as well, because I know that that's the case for so many of us. And by the way, if you want to get a hold of Adrian's book about essay writing and things like that, we can do a little.
You don't have to go buy it. You don't have to go buy it.
No, we have to go buy it. I'm sure it's super helpful. I actually need to get on that. It's been on my to-do list for a little while. So going back a bit, stepping back a bit in time, you know, thinking back to your school years and you know, perhaps early university and around the time you were diagnosed and things like that. What were some of the key challenges that you faced?
Yeah, when I was diagnosed, and probably the right the way through my teenage years, I was incredibly angry that I'd been diagnosed as dyslexic. I felt that I just wanted to be normal, you know. But apart from that, I wasn't too fussed really about I wasn't too bothered about my dyslexia, and it presented challenges in terms of my work. So, for example, particularly in middle school or high school, I would just not submit work, and I would get failed for that because obviously, you know, I'd actually done the work, strangely enough, but I was too embarrassed to submit it because I knew that it was full of errors or full of mistakes and, you know, basically illegible. My handwriting particularly was very, very bad. So yeah, bizarrely, I did the work, but I was too ashamed to actually submit the work. So that was a bit of a strange one. I was diagnosed as dyslexic when I was about 10, but it was a little bit of a roller coaster ride because I was diagnosed as dyslexic, and then the educational psychologist who diagnosed me was retired from the services of the Education Authority because he was finding too many children to be dyslexic, and he was replaced by another educational psychologist who came and tested me. I remember over biscuits and a glass of milk, He didn't do any tests whatsoever, and he wrote a report for the school and for my parents that stated very categorically that I was of below average intelligence. I wasn't dyslexic, and the problem was that I had an over-anxious mother who wouldn't accept that her child was of below average intelligence, and I quote, wouldn't amount to much. And then subsequently to that, I had teachers who kind of, parents' evenings. I don't know whether you have parents' evenings in Australia.
Yeah.
Parents' evenings, and teachers used to say to my parents, "Oh, he'll make a good husband one day, but that's about it. He'll never amount to much." And then I had another, obviously, educational psychologist report that completely contradicted that. So a lot of it was trying to get that help in the first place, or any kind of support. And the other thing, when I moved into the high school, we had this system, may even still exist, I don't really know, of streaming. So there was a bottom stream, a middle stream, and a high stream. And the clever kids went into the high stream, and the really below average intelligence kids went into the bottom stream. So I was obviously put in the bottom stream, and most of the kids in that stream were really had severe behavioural issues, actually, and I was kind of bullied within an inch of my life. Left school, and I finally went to a specialist dyslexia school called Maple Hayes in Lichfield here in the UK, which is quite a well-known, famous school in the UK at least, specifically for dyslexic children, still going to this day. And that's what turned me around, really.
Wow, there's so much in that I'd love to unpack. And did you send like a little photocopy of your doctorate to that educational psychologist out there who just said that you were thick?
I wish I could find them. Yeah, I wish I could find them. Yeah.
That would definitely be my first thing that I'd be doing as soon as I got a doctorate, or as soon as I get my med degree. I feel like I'm going to send that to a few people just to definitely just to rub it in their face a little bit. Yeah. So what were some of, perhaps looking back, are there any strengths that you feel like you would attribute to your dyslexia, or things that you feel like your dyslexia has kind of helped out with along the way?
I think the main thing is creativity, really, in terms of strength. I mean, obviously, as you know, and most of your viewers will know, dyslexia does put in your way an awful lot of kind of boundaries and hurdles to get round. I think the creativity aspect of things is probably the one thing that really kind of allowed me, and I hope it will allow your viewers as well, to find ways around those hurdles. Whether that be as a way of kind of trying to excel in new and exciting and undiscovered fields, or creativity in terms of allowing you to fit in and just, get the job done. I mean, if you take myself, for example, as an academic, the only way really of contributing to the field is via publication or presenting at conferences. I don't particularly like presenting at conferences because I find them a bit boring. As you know, attention span is an issue. So listening to people presenting papers, I can concentrate for about 3 minutes, and then that's it. I'm off with the fairies.
It's more than I've got.
I don't really see the point of them. But otherwise, the only way is publishing, and I can't change that. I can't change. All I've been able to do is find creative ways of allowing me to write in the manner that is acceptable in the discipline or whatever it is, to get my stuff out there. So I think creativity is the one strength, and being able to make connections within a big picture and draw often disparate information together to find patterns, or to find kind of key take-home messages, if you like, that can be and new things as well, new ideas, and join up the dots.
Absolutely. Some great advice there. Thank you so much. And building upon that, I mean, would you say that that's your number one piece of advice to young people who are wishing to enter the academic world, or is there something that you'd like to add to that?
Based on my experience, I found that I can only really excel when I'm using my creativity. And one of the mistakes that I made, and I don't wish to prevent anybody from doing this if they don't want to, but one of the mistakes that I made was to go into management. I found management horrendous because dealing with kind of policies, procedures, all of those sequential things, endless meetings where nothing happens and nothing is decided, and half the time I can't even remember what was in the meetings or what was said 5 minutes ago in the meeting. I found that really, really difficult. And managing teams and managing people and managing a program, there's no creativity in there at all. Management is mainly about kind of following procedures and protocols and keeping on top of things. Leadership, so it's distinguishing here between management and leadership. Leadership, which is much more kind of broad stroke, big picture thinking, like Richard Branson and all of those kind of famous dyslexics who have been highly successful. I think that probably suits the dyslexic mind down to a T. The problem, of course, for the majority of the job market is, in order to get into a leadership position, you first need to be a manager. And I need to figure out, I'll get back to you at some point if I figure this out, a way of getting through the management to the leadership. I've not figured that out yet. But I found that really, really difficult. I think my final thought would be, to always remember, to me, that I know this may be a fairly straightforward message and people have come across it before, but I really feel strongly that it's worth reiterating, that use the disability label to help you get help. But dyslexia is not a disability. I mean, it's just a weird way of kind of, accessing support without the disability label. Certainly in the UK, you can't access additional support.
No, I think that's a really important message. And so many people, feel guilty or feel like they're, or made to feel like that they're cheating for using that label. But to be honest, for the crap that we go through in our lives, I think even if we were using it unfairly, I still think in the grand scheme of things, it would be a fair scenario. But it's certainly not cheating in any way.
Definitely.
We are well deserving of using those accommodations, and no one should, be made to feel guilty about that. But that difference between, using that word disability to be able to, as a bit of a key in a lock, so to speak. And not identifying, as someone who is disabled. I think, that's a clear distinction between those two things. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that wisdom. I'm sure a lot of people will get a lot out of this. If you're happy to be contacted, I'll pop those details up on the next slide / screen. And if you're enjoying the series, feel free to comment below, or if you've got comments or questions, I can always get in touch with Adrian on your behalf and get back to you. So please do engage with us. If there's a particular profession that you would like to see next on the series, also put that in the comments below. Do all those good things, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.